Okay. Hello, folks. Welcome to our little tutorial to complement our classroom session on making a so-called creative double exposure. So we're combining two photos into one, and we're starting with a portrait to use as a kind of a central framing device. So the first order of business is we want to get a good selection going before we bring in our secondary image. So, this image has, some problems. It's maybe a bit low contrast. Where her shoulder is meeting the white background is maybe a little bit blown out. So we're going to want to pay a little special attention to see if there's any problems, any bleed in. Although with Adobe Photoshop 2021, all signs pointing to that being pretty good. The first thing we want to do is get this kind of floating on top of its own layer. So we're going to select our background and we're going to do a little Command J, and we're going to rename that layer. We're going to call it portrait, and then we're going to select our background and we're just going to fill that with white. So I'm going to make that our new basic canvas. So go edit, fill. And rather than choosing foreground color, because it depends, what you last had, we're going to deliberately go straight to white. Okay, and we're going to make sure we have portrait selected. So the next order of business is to get our selection going. So there's a bunch of different ways. We could go to select subject to get it started. We could use some different selection tools, or we could just go right into select and mask. Okay, so we have our onion skin mode here. So we're going to go directly to overlay. Okay, so now it's just a better visualization. And now we're going to click on select subject here at the top left. We're going to get something going. And, we have a tricky organic selection here happening. So, and then we got a couple little spots to fill in here. We can see the background showing through. So refined hair might just give us like a little bit more subtlety. Gonna click on that once, and not a lot going. We gotta make sure we got content aware or object aware versus color aware in the refine mode. Let's look to see if these make any difference. I'm going to look to this mode here. I'm going to go to object aware, or rather color aware. We're going to get a little warning here saying things may redraw. That's fine. Not expecting a large difference here. Color aware versus object aware. I think I like object aware better. I'm going to go back to my view mode here, back to overlay. I have my refine edge brush here. It says, I believe it's a second tool. It's got a radius, so I'm going to use my square bracket key. I like to, straddle the edges here of the problem, or I'm just going to dab in the middle here. And if I thought there was any kind of trickier areas, I could kind of do this. Sometimes it makes it worse, so you got to watch out for that. I got to Command Z. I'm going to leave that alone, I think. That's okay. And I'm going to looking here. Things might be a little tricky around the shoulders or like just around the necklace. I think that's pretty good. Oh, there's my remember settings button. They've moved it all the way up here. Okay, so edge detection. Let's just put to be safe, we'll put 2 pixels, smart radius. Photoshop seems to glitch on this remember settings. Let's uncheck that and recheck it just to make sure. Going to leave out the global refinements alone. And for this purpose, I think I'm going to output let's go straight to mask. Okay, since we already have it on our layer. And we would click OK. There we go. So if we option left click in our mask or alt click on a PC, we've got something like this. So let's kind of zoom in to the tricky areas. I'm going to hit the / key just to kind of see how things are. And I'm going, for what's actually in the photo, where things are not blown out and stuff, this is actually pretty good. I don't really like the jaws getting eaten up here, so maybe I'm going to use a polygonal lasso tool, feather of 1 pixel, and I'm going to kind of redraw some edges here and make sure I can fill that with black. Edit, fill, and choose black. Oops, why did that not work? Oh no, sorry. Your humble teacher made a mistake. We need to fill that with white actually. And that is fine. Edit, fill. Fill with white. There we go. Okay, so a little bit of the skin detail came back in. So again, the mask here is hiding what was in the background before. So if you want too much of that got selected, then you want to, bring back the subject as being revealed. You fill that with white in the mask. Let's look over here. Okay, so a little not so good here. So let's polygonal lasso tool. Just make a rough selection here. Edit. Fill with white, just like before. There we go. So this is just a subtle thing here. It's not going to have a major interplay at the end of the day, but okay. So there we go. We have our mask, and let's bring in our secondary image. So I'm just going to go to my my folder here. I've got it just put aside. So this is the secondary image that we're going to bring in, and we're just going to do a drag and drop, and it's going to arrive with some handles, precise handles here. So I could use the transform function to make it larger, but it's based on the way we've merged our document. That's not necessary. So I'm just going to drag one of the corner handles. Be sure to be a corner. If you don't do corner, like say the middle, actually no, oh boy, never mind. Adobe know that to no longer distort these things. So once upon a time, if you had to hold on to the shift key to make sure you didn't distort. So no longer. So my goal here is to just make the document as secondary photo as tall as the main portrait image. So once I'm around that setting, so it says around, oh god, like 120%, I'm going to hit the checkbox or the return key on my keyboard. We'll also get the job done. So that's covering up the entire photo. So what we want to do is the mask that we made for our portrait layer. Let's just rename this here. We'll call it landscape or something pertinent. So the mask that we made for our portrait layer, we have to sort of carry that over to the landscape layer. So all we have to do is, while holding on to the option key, we're going to drag up. And voila, I'm going to do Command 0 here to get the whole, oh boy. So 120% was not enough. No worries. I'm going to unlink. This is the thing we have to do anyway. Unlink the landscape from the mask. And now I'm going to do Command T for the resize. Oops. Oh, come on, Rebecca. Okay. Command T. And you can see the problem. So let's pretend that I intended to do this. Okay, so something like that. Okay, so this is the goal, that it's going to fill the frame. And then by unlinking the portrait from its mask, later when we use the move tool, we can kind of move things around without actually moving the mask layer. So that is convenient there. Next thing we're going to do, so we're going to add a little color wash to the landscape layer just to add some extra interplay. So we're going to go to adjustment layers. And just before we go to gradient here at the top, and not gradient map, but gradient, we're going to hold on to the option key, and that is going to give us an option to, oh boy, everything's making a liar out of me today. Come on. Holding on option. Yeah, okay. Wow. Sticky keyboard or something. We're going to hit the use previous layer to create clipping mask. And we're going to click OK. And that brings up this gradient fill option. So what I don't want to see is just this basic black and white mode. We're going to pick a color of some kind. So if we can expand this little window here, we have a whole bunch of different options here. So these are kind of grouped into themes. So what am I going to do here? Oranges, pastels, neutrals. Cloud. Some of these are going to be fairly subtle. Ooh, there's some strong ones. Let's do this one here. So in the purples. Okay. Now we can control things. Some of the angles. And so on. But let's leave it somewhere like that. So that's covering up the entire base layer. So we do not want this set to normal. And we don't want to change the opacity in this instance. We want to experiment with the blending mode. So we can kind of cycle through here. You could either use your mouse and settle on one, or you could do the Shift plus. Should work. Yeah, Shift plus will cycle down your list, and Shift minus will allow you to shift how to cycle sort of back upwards towards the list. So I'm going to settle on color burn. So this just adds kind of like an intense splash of surreal colors. I kind of like that. And we're going to take our portrait layer back, and we're going to drag it all the way up to the top. Okay. And so what we want to do here is turn this into black and white. And to do that, we're going to use that as an adjustment layer. So we're going to kind of like making sure we clip our black and white adjustment layer as before. Hold on to the option key and then choose black and white right over here. Use previous layer to create clipping mask. We're going to get a basic black and white representation here. So we're not limited to that. We could use, I have a whole bunch of different options here. We could choose like maximum black. So this tends to make for darker. So not really my taste. Or we could use this as a launching point. We could do something like this. And what are we going to do? It's maximum white. We could do red filter. That kind of makes the necklace really pop. High contrast red filter. Let's try that one. Well, not too much difference between that one. Blue filters tend to make the skin look really gross. Yep. And that's definitely the situation here. Green filters tend to be kind on some portraits, but it's a little flat and dull. So I think we're gonna stick with high contrast red filter. We could always change that after, depending. Like this is all about an interplay between blend modes and so on. So I'm going to close the properties panel for now. Okay, and let's see here. Let's add a brightness contrast adjustment layer. Again, clipping is fairly important here. And we're going to add contrast just to deepen the blacks a little bit, increase the whites. We can play with this later if we want. Okay, so we have our blend mode, color burn. Now the problem is right now, so the portrait is completely obscuring everything below. So making sure it's the portrait layer that we've selected, we are going to change our change these modes as well. So the idea is to get some kind of interaction between both images, bring out some textures and so on. So I'm going to start at dissolve, and I'm just going to do Shift plus and play around. Kind of like screen. Screen's kind of like a good safe one. That tends to bring out the features back in. This one's kind of cool at overlay. Soft light. Interesting. Ooh, difference is kind of cool. Let's get back to screen, and then I'm going to go back to my gradient fill, and I'm going to go back to those blending modes and see if something is, if I have a sweet spot. This is not working for me. That's the normal mode. Come on. Color burn. I'm back to color burn. I guess I like color burn the best. And I could click back on the landscape layer. And with the move tool, just kind of play with things again. The idea is I want some features to kind of come back into the frame. I could play again with different black and white. Filters. Okay, let's go back to our brightness contrast. Let's try less contrast, more contrast. Sort of interesting. Thing about this particular assignment is I sometimes end up with images I like and sometimes not so much, and it's often dependent on the kind of colors you can settle on. What do we got here? Sepia, selenium. Let's go with something like that. Nope, I don't like that actually. Let's go with this for some reason. Kind of interesting. Back to OK. And I go back to my blend modes. What do we got here? Difference. And difference is intriguing me tonight. Okay, let's do something like this. I kind of like the paintings kind of crossing over. It's back to the portrait that I had at screen. Ooh, okay. This is interesting to me finally. So I've let portrait go to color dodge. I'm gonna go back to the landscape. See if I can. I think I want to see the eyes a bit as much as possible there. Okay, let us say we've settled on that. Have I mentioned students often do much better jobs than I do these days? So anyways, here's a little starting point. So and that is kind of where we're at. Okay, we want the landscape set to normal mode, leave that at 100%. Portrait mode, ideally you have that left at 100% opacity as well. And it's really just about the blend mode. Let's just see if we can, yeah. So it's not about the opacity of a thing. It's really how the textures blend in. I'm actually playing with the blend mode of the black and white, which is kind of different, but not necessary for what we're trying to do. So that is pretty much it for this demonstration. Have fun with it, and I look forward to seeing your results.